All right, well, we'll just kick it off. Welcome, everyone, to a conversation today about realities of working with tile in custom home projects. So before we begin, my name is Caroline. I'm the moderator of today's panel, and I am the managing editor of Pro Remodeler. We're also the media sponsor of this panel, and Pro Remodeler, we're a B2B publication serving residential remodeling contractors, so you can check us out at proremodeler.com. Before I get into introducing or having our lovely panelists introduce themselves, a few housekeeping notes. So please turn off or set your phones to vibrate during this session. Also, make sure that your badge was scanned so it can confirm your attendance in case you need that for work reasons or for your continuing education credits. And don't forget, visit the show floor for more educational opportunities. There's a mobile app for more details on everything that's out there for today and tomorrow. And there are 3 different floor stages. So fabricator stage, installation innovation stage, trends and solutions. So don't forget to check that out. So let's hop into it now. Realities of working with tile and custom home projects. So my panelists here are split between seasoned custom builders and seasoned tile installers. So our conversation is going to kind of explore some of those challenges and disconnects between the two sides. Maybe in the end we can offer some great solutions to the audience or to each other and just kind of discover what it's like from one end to another. So I introduced myself. Now I'm going to have our wonderful panelists please introduce themselves. So Jeff, we'll start with you.
Sure, I'm Jeff Occhipinti, Columbia River Tile and Stone out of Portland, Oregon. We specialize in high-end tile installation. We're a NTCA 5-star accredited contractor, CTI and ACT certified installers, and coverings. We have 2 past CID awards.
Okay, my name is John Cox from San Antonio, Texas. We've been a member of the National Tile Contractors Association since 1985, and we've been fortunate enough to win numerous CID awards as well as 5-star, it's part of the program at NTCA, some of the installation awards as well. And we do high-end residential like we all are up here, but we specialize in trying to do the hardest, the most difficult, challenging jobs.
Hi, my name is Allison Anderson. I'm the founder and CEO of Integral Builders. Have an office in Chicago, Illinois, and an office in Western Michigan. We primarily focus on major renovations and historical restorations of landmark properties. We are in the high-end field, and we're just trying to survive every day.
My name is Michael Freiburger. I'm the owner and director of design for NEWLOOK Design, Build, and Development. We're a vertically integrated company in the North Shore of Chicago. We work in luxury residential, both single and multifamily, and some light commercial work. And we often also get accused of trying to do the most complicated thing possible.
So we all have something in common here. And I would also like to note that we're going to reserve 10 minutes at the end of the panel for any questions you might have. But if, of course, you have a question as it comes up through the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so let's start with one of the first major challenges that's facing both of your types of businesses in different ways, and that's the labor shortage, right? Labor challenges. So I wanted to start with Jeff and John and kind of hearing a little bit more about what is that labor shortage like actually in your markets and for your specific needs. How is it affecting your business?
Sure. Finding skilled labor is difficult. And when you do find somebody, just to retain them is just compounds that challenge. Basically, when you do get an installer, they're going to be set in their ways. You really need to have a system to bring them in, just to guide them towards, installing to industry standards and falling into your system and being successful with your company. If you can't do that, it's just going to be a revolving door of installers, which makes nobody happy. We've always built our company through bringing in apprentices and bringing them on up. There's just tremendous resources with that. And, in 2017, we became part of an amazing apprenticeship program. And that really changed a lot of us having so much turnover. With that, it gives, being a part of an apprenticeship program just gives the apprentice a clear path forward. They know where they're at in their evolution of being in this trade. And, so with our program, it's, we use NTCA University for that. They have on-the-job training and then performance classes. So it just is just a tremendous thing. So when we became part of that, we really built the core of our company. And, I can't say enough about apprenticeship.
That's wonderful. And John, what's it like from your perspective?
Well, it's the labor shortage is always, skilled labor is probably the biggest bottleneck in as far as growth. Yeah. And so what we've tried to do is, number one, hire better. And we have a rigorous, basically a questionnaire whenever somebody applies that really will pre-qualify them whether we want to pursue, keeping the next step. And some of those questions may be psychological, may be trade specific. And we try to sift those guys out to say, okay, we're going to go to the next level. And it's a challenge. We call it reprogramming when I hire someone, because we're trying to get them to understand in our culture and how we work. We're very detail oriented. So when for an example, when somebody, typically a tile setter will work for someone else, when they start a wall, they'll start from one side and work, and whatever cut is on the remains on the other side is what they deem as acceptable. We center everything. And so it's a difficult transition for them to understand what we're looking for. And one of the other things, my son's really got involved with some of the high schools, the movement with our government and everything else with the labor shortage is schools. We've got a high school that we just did a job fair for that we've gotten kids to work during the summer. We've got one kid that's stuck, but we hire them from juniors to seniors, just trying to plant that seed. So whenever they get done, they have an avenue of coming to work for us and knowing how we work and we know how they work. But it's been successful.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And so what I heard from you say, and I saw Allison nod over there, is that the skilled labor shortage is a huge bottleneck. And it's great because in both of your companies, you've helped kind of create this pipeline for your work, help retain them more. So moving over to the builders, what is the skilled labor shortage like for you from your perspective?
The struggle is real.
Yeah.
So, honestly, for us, I do about 5 projects per year. They're all larger scale. And to be quite frank, I really only have one installer that I trust. And all of our projects kind of work around him, because it's like the more complex the projects get and the more expensive the materials get, it's kind of like, big gains, big losses, right? And so my biggest struggle, I've tried probably in the last 3 years to hire different tile guys. And these things are disasters. They're not like a little off. They're like big problems. Like they don't know how to do shower bases, or they can't seal, or like we're missing red guard, and like the architect in here is like, it's just like, so for us, like it's hard, and like that attention to detail, and like, John was saying, like, it's about centering things. Like we don't do wedge tiles. Like that's a failure. We need full tiles all the way across wherever we're going. That's high-end design. And, builders kind of sometimes are unrealistic expectations put on us by the clients, and we are completely reliant on our trades to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Michael?
100% real, yeah. Agreed. And, one thing she said is when you get into the higher end stuff, the higher risk, you get less people. Right, so a lot of guys are like, not even going to touch it, right? So now you only have 1 or 2 people to go to, and we don't have a lot. We have, one sort of bigger group that does a lot of our commercial kind of base stuff, and then a handful of, smaller guys that we trust. In some cases, the biggest thing that we can do to try to retain them, because we're not really necessarily helping on the labor force itself, right? But got to pay them on time, got to get the jobs ready for them, right? Got to make their job easy, and then. For the guys that are really doing our super custom stuff, is we have to help them buy in, right? We want them to take pride in it, right? Like, hey, you can come meet the owner. Let's talk about it. Does it make sense to you? Do you want to do it a little bit differently? Let's be there on the layout. Here's the 3D model, right? And so sort of just making them feel like they're part of a team, and then they want to work for us, and so when our job is ready, they'll come there instead of maybe putting us on hold. So that's on our end, I think, to try to help it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because the experience goes both ways, right? How can you be that first choice contractor that an esteemed, experienced tile installer wants to work with? Jeff John, any notes on that? What makes you want to continue working with a builder?
Sure. So just to go back with bringing in an installer, just to go back to having a system. When you bring them in, you can't assume that you're going to put them out there and they're going to deliver a product that you want them to. You need to guide them through that, have them work with your other installers, your other team, so they know clearly what you expect out of them as a new installer, a new part of your team. What was the next part of that question?
Well, I think you addressed it pretty well, but I was asking about what makes you want to continue working with a builder. What do they do that really makes you say, I love working with them?
Sure. So long-standing relationships are awesome. They make everything go really smooth. So when you have a builder that you've been working with, it's an awesome system. You go in, the floor is going to be prepped properly for what we need. Not having all kinds of deflection issues, the framing, the plumbing, all that. The contractors involved in bringing that project to life. It's a well-oiled machine. When you're working with a new builder, contractor, you really do need to go in with a lot of communication, like a lot of site meetings to be like, this is what we need, and it's just constant communication,
Right.
and just having a builder that wants to work with you and not be like, we need this, we don't want you to do it. Obviously, you don't want to work with somebody like that. Right?
Just do it.
Yep.
It's, oh, what do you
Figure it
want
out.
me to do, right?
Just figure it out.
Well, they'll do something.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's about fit. So we're trying to marry with, a builder that likes our style, we like theirs. They pay us on time when we get done. A lot of communication during the process. Communication to me is the single most important thing in any job or anybody, is communicating what your expectations are, identifying what their expectations are, and making sure that we meet those. We educate a builder because we still do mud work on walls and floors. Everybody is now using cement boards and foam. We're still doing the old traditional way. But I was talking to somebody today. Our customer base that understand mud is really dying off because these young guys, as they get into it, number one, they can't do it, and number two, they don't want to do it, and the builder doesn't know the difference. And so we have to educate the builder on what the value is and how we're different and how we're going to work with them.
Very interesting. And obviously communication we're talking about is key. And without proper communication, there's obviously disconnects. And we had a pre-panel conversation to really talk about what are these big headaches, what are these challenges. And I think the first thing that came up was the disconnect between designers and their dreams and what they want for a project, and then the budget or the reality of it, right? So talking to the builders over here, Allison, your business model, you work with outside architects, right? And Michael, you're in-house with the designer. So Allison, maybe you can start. Talk to us in your role. What's your experience with this disconnect, and how does it affect, your projects?
Yeah, so I think working with architects that are not in-house is the same as working with subs that are not in-house, and the fact that you're building those relationships in the same way with the architects, and Integro can't work with every architect and designer. We're too sophisticated for some. Sometimes, and we're, some architects find us annoying because we are annoying. I'm sure that's why they don't like us. So anyway, I think the biggest disconnect on tile is always a big pressure point, I feel like, when it comes to design drawings, because I think it's very rare that I get what I need. And what I need is 90%. Like, I'm not looking for an architect to give me a tile layout that's 100% of what I need. And I don't want that because I consider tile installation to be an art. I consider the installers to be artisans, and I want them to fill that last 10%. And so
You're a rarity.
yeah,
She
I'm
really
also
is.
annoying, as I've been told. So
That's okay.
So the reality is, I feel like when you have a good tile installer, these people are very proud of what they're doing, and they have an opinion always about what they're doing. It's very important for me managing them to make sure that their opinion is valued and that we're listening to their opinion. I don't want to be bulldozing anybody through any trade. And so I think the biggest struggle either comes from insufficient tile layouts, things like not accounting for the spacing in the grout lines, right? Like what is that grout line? It makes a difference. Are we 16 inches? Are we eighth of an inch? What kind of grout? Like if I get another tile layout without the grout colors on it, I'm just gonna jump out the window. Like why is it so hard? And just where also like alignments. Like I've started doing in our technical standards, like whatever you want aligned, just give me a dashed red line, because on one hand, it's insufficient drawings, and on the other hand, it's like I'm getting details about stuff that doesn't matter, or I'm getting information, or they want too much control over it. And it's a more fluid process. We're working with artisans, working with tile installers, and it's like I want an architect or a designer to give me 90% of what I need and let me fill that last 10% right when we're installing in that site meeting. Let's work out all those fine details. So I think with any process where you have a lot of moving parts and a lot of different types of personalities, that's always the challenge.
Absolutely. And Michael, like I mentioned, so your design build, so your designers are in-house. So do you still struggle with this disconnect? What is that like for you?
There's we do have architects in-house, and we do a lot of our own design in-house. We also work with outside designers, right? And so there's still that struggle, for sure. And some are, again, very sophisticated and very detailed and know what they're talking about, and others, I just want them to show me a pretty picture, and I'll say, okay, great, we'll run with it.
I call them
there.
hand wavers.
Yeah.
They wave their hand.
Show me a
I want it to
picture,
look like
we'll
this.
handle the rest.
Yes.
But because we do everything in-house, and because we actually design everything in full 3D, our entire projects, we'll actually detail the tile in 3D as well. So, some of the, for example, we wouldn't detail every single mosaic, right? But we would try to find a way to represent the tile because it's all the little things that we want this side to align, we want it to be full tiles, right? We planned it for 24 by 24 tiles, let's say, but that tile could be 23 and 7/8, and it could be 23 and 3/8, right? It's going to be all over the place, and maybe it's warped, maybe it's not, and so we're going to actually build it in 3D, every single piece. It doesn't take that long for our design team, and so we're still probably only getting 90% there, even though we do go through and make a digital twin of all of our rough construction, right? So we have that, then we import it back into our program. So we're trying to eliminate as much field guesswork, and in the end, if it is for a client, we're going to show them that exact layout and make them approve it, right? So it's not like they're going to get halfway through one wall and then be like, I didn't understand, or I don't like it, or we have a problem. I'm going to be like, but we laid it out exactly for you. We know the thicknesses of it. We've adjusted the grout lines, right? We've potentially rendered it with those colors. So we use that technology and our in-house capabilities to try to streamline the process as much as we can. And I think it helps a lot, especially when you have so many things with a border and an inlay and around corners, and then there's a bump out, and where does the channel sit inside that wavy tile, and it just makes sense to just, if we can do it on the computer, I'd rather do it there than make a mistake in the field.
Oh, absolutely. And all of those little details help with the budget, right? And making sure it's feasible and it fits within that. And so tile installers, talk a little bit about this disconnect between budget, reality, what designers ask for, the feasibility of it. How does that affect you in your business?
When you bid a project and they'll come back and be like, we do a lot of options on with certain builders, so if they had a herringbone shower and it's out of budget, maybe it's just going to be a herringbone on the back accent wall, different things like that. So we'll go back and forth with that, it's like, but it's usually just a few times, just to be in line with what they expect, what we could do. The biggest thing is definitely a lot of education on door transitions is huge. We need to build a floor that's going to be structurally sound, meet industry standards, and they want flush transition to existing hardwoods. And so you definitely bumping heads against different things like that. And obviously, they're the ones that need to come up with the solution to raise that transition, because we need to build a floor that's going to last. So, it is that back and forth that you're always going to have.
One thing that we focus on is details, because we want to have that symbiotic relationship with the designer on layouts, grout joints. Tell you a funny story about grout joints, which will help you guys. So I was in tile before they had spacers. When spacers came out, our spacers were pieces of cardboard that we would cut in and put between the tile. Anybody that's ever done that knows what I'm talking about. When spacers came out,
Cut the box up, right? Yeah. Cut the box up.
yeah. When spacers came out, I laughed like a hyena, thinking they were training wheels, and you didn't need spacers. Up until the time that I did a job, and I told the guy we were going to do as tight as we could, and afterwards he said, "You didn't do it tight enough, so I'm not going to pay you everything that I wanted to." One thing I learned is the spacers, 16th, eighth, 3/16, quarter. Now you can do a dry layout where you use those spacers to identify what the grout joints really are. And before you start, and then say, well, I wanted it tighter on the wall than what it actually is. So those spacers have actually benefited. We don't use them a lot. We actually still use our fingertips, and tools and lasers to identify, straight lines and stuff. But, it's getting back to communication, and expectations. Establishing that relationship where the trust is established, where they say, a lot of times, just go do it because we know it's going to be done right, because we've established that from the very beginning.
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge for me, so the way that I structure pricing for tile to my clients is I have a standard tile install, and that's X dollars a square foot, and then I have a custom 1, custom 2, right? So, a standard tile has all these stipulations to it. It's not glass tile, it's not vertical tile, it's not handmade tile. We're not custom fabricating the tile, we're not breathing on the tile, it's standard tile, right? And, and then everything else kind of goes up from there, and we'll price it usually per square foot based on whatever that tile is. Large format being kind of the higher end of that, because you need the suctions and it takes time and all the risk and all that. So the biggest challenge that I have is that my projects go usually about a year to 2 years. And so the pricing that I get from my tile installer in 2022, for example, is not really what he wants to be charging in 2024 by the time we're ready to install it. So I'd say my biggest challenge is how to make it equitable for both of us, because the last couple years he went up by 30% each year. It's $5 a square, anywhere from $3 to $5 a square foot each year. And I understand we had the COVID fallout and whatever, we're all sort of catching up. But I'm that's a tough one that him and I are still trying to figure out. I don't know how to do it. It's I don't really want to do tile install as an allowance. With the clients, I would like to keep that below board, if you would, but I would say it's just hard, when we have projects that are going longer than a year and into 2 years, how we find a good way to price it so that he can hold pricing and I can hold pricing, basically.
We can talk about it at the beginning of a project, right, and say, hey, this isn't going to happen for 2 years. I want you to plan accordingly, but of course I still want the lowest price, right? So, everyone's proposals, ours, your guys is normally going to say, hey, this is good for 30 days. If we know that's going to happen, I think it has to be communication up front, right, and be all right, we don't know what it's going to look like, guys, but put 5% on it or something like that. Or I would just let the client know that, hey, this is all volatile, or it's going to be allowances, or hey, this is what I put in. Maybe it's not an allowance, but this is what I'm holding. But what do you guys think about that? Are you going to hold it for a year?
That's always a big challenge, because, everything does go up. And, labor goes up. Nothing goes down.
Never.
And so
nothing ever goes down.
No, and it's a real challenge, and it's really about communication. We put on our invoices good for 30 days. And that way when a job comes up, or if we have to rebid it, we try to put that in there. But it is difficult, because they say, well, this is my budget, and now we've exceeded my budget. And it's I'm not the one that created it. We're just soldiers trying to make it happen. And a lot of times, it's just you go back and forth, and sometimes nobody wins, and sometimes everybody understands, and it's a win-win. But it's a challenge every single job, just because our raw materials are going up 30%, and how do you absorb that? You can't absorb it in your profit margin because eventually you'll go out of business. You won't stay in business. That's what I tell a customer. You want me to stay here? Or you want me to go out of business because I appease you on this? We're not going to go out of business because of one job. But over a period of time, if you continue to do that, it's a domino effect, and the results won't be good.
As the project evolves, so does your pricing for it, And then once the project does start, when you do have change orders, they're not going to be like the same cost that you typically charge, because the project's moving forward. All of a sudden, you hit this change, all the momentum stops. So it should be at a higher rate for a change order item that typically costs something before the project gets started, when it could be properly planned for into the schedule. So that, aspects like that are really critical as well.
But one thing, I'm not a change order person. We do high-end residential, and we try to figure enough in the job that through the fluctuation, we take the good with the bad. Unless there's a major charge, change, and it's like, okay, I got to give you a change order. But I try to do that with established relationship, that we're not going to be like these other guys. Every time somebody changes their mind, let me give you a change order. Let me give you a change order. Because it's a relationship you want to nurture, and you want to do work. I want people to be just as happy for me to walk in their house as them to see me as I want to see them. And that's the relationship we try to forge. And, it's sometimes people, it's just a one-off, and we don't like one-offs. We'll do them, but we don't like them.
Do you have any clients you're happy to see when you walk in the house?
The last day, maybe? The first day and the last day?
It's like buying a boat?
Yeah, exactly. The only other thing I was going to add to that is, in some cases, we, especially during the pandemic, we got in the warehousing business a little bit, right? So if we knew something was going to be a year out and we had no idea we knew the pricing could be volatile, if it was our own projects, we would just make a decision and we would buy it and put it in our garage, or we would, talk to the client and be like, hey, are you going to authorize this to, us to draw on these funds now, and we'll warehouse it for you. I don't want to be in the warehousing business, but I don't want to later all of a sudden find out that it's back ordered or that it's going to be twice as expensive, and now I have to have that conversation. So.
Absolutely. And because this is such a kind of just a hard position to be in from both ends, when those bids are changing so much, and sometimes if it's you get it a year and a half before the project actually starts, and they're going up 30%. What is often the most common solution? Are you sometimes eating those because you're going back and forth with the builder trying to determine what is the best price, or what is usually the conclusion that you both get to from both ends?
Communication. You have to communicate, and they have to understand. Most of them don't, but but it's about communication. If you got to be able to talk about and reason where they understand. Both parties understand. It's not one-sided. It has to be both parties understand, because it's a give and take. It doesn't do you any good, again, to absorb. You can only absorb so many of those before, it's not worth doing the job.
I would say that, again, the communication, and, if you have a good relationship with your trade partners, we don't even call them subcontractors, we call them trade partners, right? Then I'm going to go to them and be like, look, this one is tight. Everything went up. You got to give me a break on this one. That other one that we're doing, it's all good, right? Throw a couple extra bucks on that one or something, but, and that's it. If we make them eat it every time, they're not going to work with us, or they're going to raise their price from the beginning, right? And so it's a lose-lose. And so you just have to communicate it. And when it's, if I can't go back to the owner for whatever reason on it, then, hey, help me out on this one, John, and the next one, I'll take care of you.
And that's only really a result that you get from a solid relationship, right? You can have those conversations.
You have to trust each other that that's true, right? Yes. I will remember this the next time we do a job in 2 weeks, right?
You find out who the whiners and who the ones that you don't want to work for again, because you just say thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, I would say always, like as a builder, like everyone always gets paid. Whether or not they get the next job is one thing, but everyone always gets paid.
Oh, yeah.
So another headache that we were chatting about were manufacturer realities. And we're kind of talking about, you're installing the project. What do? You're reviewing manuals, maybe installation details. And Allison, you had mentioned that one of the biggest problems that you see with tile failures often comes from these manufacturers maybe not providing as much information as necessary, right? So can you talk about that challenge and what that experience is like for you?
Yeah, I'd say it's twofold. I mean, the first one is, handmade tiles are becoming really prevalent. A lot of people love them. They're on Instagram, they're on Pinterest. But people don't quite understand the actual dynamic of them and how they work. They're different thicknesses, they're different sizes, and we're talking a lot. It could be a quarter inch shorter, tile for tile. And I would say the installation manuals and such, they don't really give a whole lot of technical information. And it's not even so much that our installers don't know how to install. Of course they do. But it really comes down to when the client doesn't like it at the end, we have nothing to point to, right? And so it's like, we can't really say like, well, this meets all the technical specifications of how this gets installed. And I would also say that it doesn't seem like it's very rare unless we have a strong architecture and design team that the clients really understand the variances and how those tiles are, like when they're installed, like how much they change, how much they vary. Because they're looking at an architecturally adjusted photo and they're looking at Pinterest and Instagram. And then the second issue is just that when there's a manufacturer failure, which it happens, I mean, you get bad tiles or you get a bad batch or whatever, the manufacturers only replace their product. There's no labor associated with that, but the labor is where all the cost is.
For taking it out and putting it back in.
Exactly. Right? Now it's really like double the cost, and it seems like there's no manufacturer that really accounts for that, and that's a really impossible situation for me because, it's like the first half of the project is roughs. That's like where all the hard conversations happen. It's where the dreams are killed and new dreams are made, and, everybody is now on the upswing in finish carpentry. The likelihood of me coming to a client with anything like that there's a tile failure and you have to eat a change order because the manufacturer, I really can't risk that in the end when I'm looking towards photos and references, and it's like I want my clients to end on an upswing. I really fundamentally feel that tile manufacturers don't help in that process. For me, it's like I stand by my work. You stand by your product and it's going to be okay, but yeah, it's a struggle.
I think it's really critical to utilize mock-ups as well. You have these handmade tiles where tiles vary in size. You have to communicate to the homeowner, the builder, when the tile arrives, just like, there's a quarter inch difference between these tiles. You do a mock-up, we could open up the grout joints. If you want, we could grade the tiles, find the thin, the ones that are closer to this size, that size. It's more labor, it costs this much more, but to have that mock-up where the tile is set, it's grouted, because going back to spacers really quick, when tile's just laying there with non-grouted spacing, it looks different than when it is grouted. So to have a finished product and be like, this is what it's going to look like, that's it. That mock-up's there. Any questions come up later in the project, this is what's approved. And so we have our apprentices work on mock-ups as well. You're never going to have your best installer do a mock-up. It creates unrealistic standards, right? So you have your apprentice do a nice mock-up, and you have that. It's there. Whatever happens during the rest of the project, you could always go back to that.
Very good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
We don't do that a lot, but we'll do layouts, right? And we'll talk about the differences, but actually just build a mock-up. Yeah, it's a good idea when we're
Absolutely.
specific.
Mock-ups are critical, but creating or establishing customers' expectations. Whether it be mock-ups, laying it out, establishing what the customer's looking for. Now, sometimes we're not psychic, but at least you want to try to establish what they're looking for, how they're, what their expectations are in the finished product. Grout colors will completely change. Something that's light, you use a darker grout and every imperfection shows versus one that might blend in. And again, if if you don't know that going into it, and that if we're using a white subway tile and they'll use black grout, it's like, oh my gosh,
Every time.
are you sure? Let me tell you what's going to happen. Every imperfection that we've put in, every flaw is going to be accentuated. Every piece of tile that might have a small, minute chip is going to be accentuated. And I try to talk them out of it if I can. If they want to, it's like, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Or crazing. That's been an
Oh,
issue
yeah.
too with these handmaids, yeah.
Well, so one of the things I was just thinking about when you were
okay.
talking about Allison, let me hit you, is the
I'm used to it. It's okay. Yeah.
the longer you've been in business or the better the builder, the longer the contract, right? Because you just continue to add things to it. And we have language in there about, natural stone and wood, and hey, these are natural products and they're going to vary, and all these little sort of outs. And now I'm going to add one about, handmade tiles. Like, hey, there's going to be imperfections in it, and I can't promise I know everything about it because I don't, and I don't, and there's so just a couple more notes, just at least something to bring up and make them aware of it, more specifically when it comes to install, but got to put it in the contract now
Yeah.
too.
But you might look into NCCA because we have a reference manual that specifically paper was written on handmade tiles. And
did mention that, yeah.
one thing good is by giving that to the customer, at least they've read all that. You can get them to document, sign, and say, you may not have understood it, but you read it, and here's the proof that you did. I consulted on a job where the manufacturer said, this is the way our tile is. And the customer says, I'm not going to accept it. And I showed them that paper, and they said, I wish we'd had this beforehand because we could have at least established what handmade tile really represented, so the customer would know, and at least, like I said, read it where they acknowledge it. Now, where they accept it, it's two different things, but at least they've been exposed to it.
Another good idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And Jeff, you had said as well, when trying to educate, it goes back to you for mock-ups. That just works for you when you're educating those clients.
It does, and just pointing back to reference manual, TCA handbook, different things like that, just showing the standards. This is what it is. This is what we're trained to, and this is what our company's about. Just to always go back to these references is really critical.
One of the challenges that we have as an industry in the tile business is people don't follow specifications. They don't follow specifications because they don't even know that they exist. Most people, there's TCA handbook, ANSI standards, NTCA reference manual. Sometimes when I talk to another tile contractor and said, hey, what method do you use? Well, I use the method my grandfather taught me. And so it's just a domino effect that everything's great until they have a failure. And then they have to go back and look at those standards to say, I didn't even know those existed. Movement accommodation joints. You should have a soft joint in your field and also your perimeters. I consult on these jobs and I go in and the floor's tinted. And where's your movement accommodation joint? What's that? Where did you put them in? Well, I didn't. Why does it need it? And one thing that I've understood or really gotten to learn in my career is there is a tremendous amount of science about our trade that has been, put. All the effort, these meetings that we go to, it's about education. And all those things, people just don't understand or don't apply themselves, but there's a tremendous amount of science to everything that we do. It's not accidental, it's on purpose.
That's a great note. And another thing that makes education when it comes to clients important, it was just a perspective you have mentioned, Allison, during our meeting, was that tile is also one of the most exciting things for clients because it's so visual. So they almost feel like they have this ownership or they understand it because it is such a visual element, which probably adds a whole layer into those educating conversations that you do have to have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think tile is one of those things that's like when people decide they're going to build a house or remodel a house, right? They're like, oh yeah, we have everything picked out, and they've picked out cabinets and tile, right? And
That's everything.
that's everything. And but when it comes to tile, there's so much more to it. There's the grout. It's like, well, how are the ends being finished? How is everything coming together? And it is such a visual, exciting part of the process, but it's also because it's so visual when mistakes are made. That's also very visual.
That's a great note. So we're nearing the end. We have about 10 minutes left in our conversation. Again, we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing, maybe anything you noticed on the show floor. So maybe a quick whip around if each of you just want to mention a design trend that you're noticing within tile recently. And Jeff, we could start with you.
Tile's getting bigger. That's been the trend forever, right? Yeah. So that's one thing. But, a cool thing like with just the technology of the surface of some of these porcelain tiles that are mimicking natural stone, the technology is now there where they are putting the imperfections of like pitting and ridges into the surface of these. And it's not at all the booths, but as you guys walk around today, if you see something that looks like a little texture, go up and feel it. It's really tremendous, just the evolution of making a porcelain tile mimic natural stone. It's really cool.
Well, it is about larger tiles. Some of the tiles now are fluted, where you can accentuate with lighting. That's kind of cool to be able to do, because again, that's something that we can introduce that nobody else really explains to. And sometimes warehouses don't even have it yet, but it's something we're trying to be evolutionary and trying to give them as much information as possible to differentiate us from our competitor. And that's key to doing it. One thing that's really, really, you see a lot of it is pedestals. We don't struggle with it, but we have landscape architects that want a flat porch. And you can't achieve a flat porch because if rain gets on it, it's got to drain. With a pedestal system, you can lay it level where the water drains below it and drains out, and that's a solution to some of the issues of that you're creating for the challenges. I don't call them problems; I call them challenges. Some people call them opportunities. I think that's BS, but
I call them problems.
It's a little too nice.
yeah, I hate when somebody says, "I got an opportunity," and it's like BS.
Yeah.
Because I say the words.
I think a big trend that I'm seeing is the Zelige tiles, where they they're almost like a obelisk or, I don't know, it's an O word I'm looking for, but the color kind of varies as it's going across the wall. That's definitely a trend. And also with those Zelige tiles, they're usually Moroccan, and they have a long lead time, but they're also coming in batches, the same as stone. So if you're short on tile, you could get a different color, that comes in the replacement batch. And we're having a lot of clients too, wanting to miter the edges, and that communication to everybody of what that actually looks like. It's like if you want an old world, that's an old world aesthetic. So you have to love it. You can't expect like a clean line from a Zelige without a Schluter edge or something like that.
Mega large format tiles.
Yeah.
Like just super, super large format stuff.
And outside.
Yeah, and outside too. And I don't even know how we're going to move it around. It's difficult, but it's cool, and it presents a lot of design opportunities.
There's that word, opportunities.
Presents a lot of opportunities.
No, see, in that case, I'm being
BS.
serious. In that case, I'm being serious. That's the fun design side.
You're one of those guys.
Yeah, it's true.
Kidding.
Up here. Yeah.
We do a lot of pedestals. I think that's a great application. We use a lot of pedestal systems. I like that. There's a lot more out there, and they're sort of varying from complex to basic. And then, I've seen some sort of graphic tiles, right? Like where we're actually printing things sort of onto the tile, and that opens another whole window of opportunities or problems.
Wait, how are you doing that?
Challenges.
What do you mean?
No, so I don't know that I necessarily saw it here, but some of the other vendors that are making these large formats, they can put graphics on these 4x8 tiles, right? I can put a picture of you on there, and you're, if that's what you want, right? Or your family, and so now it's becoming they're making wallpaper into tile, right? And so it's a different. It really does open a lot of things you can do now.
Absolutely. And we kind of talked about as well, noticing these trends and how, they're so beautiful, but they really present some serious challenges sometimes. Allison, you outlined that with these artisan tiles. They're not the same. They're different. People have to know that with the slabs. I mean, that's a whole challenge in itself, right? So with these new trends comes some special education to the clients, right? And their own kind of headaches that come with that.
I would say not just education to the clients, but education to all of us, right? Like this is the first time that maybe John's going to be putting it up, the first time I've ever spec'd it, the first time we're ever going to stand behind it. And so, a lot of the manufacturers, at least locally, have been, putting on shows like, hey, we've got this large format porcelain, come here and we'll teach you how to do it, right? And then it might be two different versions of that, right? There might be a high level like design spec class that, me and my architecture team are going to go to, and then either construction base or an actual application. And so got to take advantage of all of that. And then we can educate the client. But we have to know what we're talking about first.
That is such a good point, right? Anyone else have anything to add on that note when it comes to trends and some new challenges you're facing?
Well, the challenge is whenever you tackle a job that you have no clue how to do it, you lose lots of sleep about it when you walk away saying, oh, I had no problem. And this is what happens a couple of times. You're the only person in San Antonio that can do this. We want you to do it. You walk away, you look at the plans, you say, oh, it's no big deal, and you walk away and say, crap, how am I going to get this done? And then you just start snowballing all the different techniques, applications, to make it all come together to develop a plan and say, okay, we got a plan, let's move forward.
So we've talked about, the challenges with Zelish that they don't want grout joints, you're going to do grout joints. But, going on the opposite spectrum, we're GPTP installers, porcelain slabs. And, you walk around the floor, there's 30% of every area had a porcelain slab. And, so just the transportation is such a big issue. It's like, these are coming damaged. You can't see the damage with micro fissures. It's not until it's on the job and, $1,000 tile panel, and, just how that challenge. And, we talked about educating the end consumer, but just even the distributors. 2 weeks ago, we went to go pick up 2 slabs at a distributor, and they're like, no, we don't put these on open trailers. The standard is it should never be on an open trailer. They could be damaged by wind. It's like, we loaded in our trailer at the end of the day, because we educated them. I sent them ANSI standards to their email right where we're standing there. And, so it's just not homeowners, education is critical, communication is critical, at all aspects of what we do.
Absolutely. And obviously we covered a variety of different challenges, different headaches, pricing, the labor shortage, new trends, installation challenges, education. But before we open up to Q&A, I wanted to offer everyone, maybe if you have one thing that you want to share with the audience on this conversation between tile installers and builders with high-end projects.
Communication.
Yeah.
But no, there's nothing more important than communication from the start to the finish. That's the number one thing.
Yeah, I would say as far as the builders are concerned, you always want to hope for the best and plan for the worst. And I think a big part of being successful in the custom high-end realm is giving people room to make mistakes. Like you were saying, if we know we've never installed this tile before, give some room, buy some extra, and educate. And it's my role as the builder to educate the clients and the design team on like, hey, this is going to be a little bit of a process. Leave us alone for a couple weeks, and we're going to figure it out. And I think, communication is key, but it is the builder's role to protect the project and protect, the trade partners below us and create an environment where people can thrive.
Yeah, I would say that it's both of those things is communication and then expectations. That's really what you're setting is communication and expectations. That's the way that we can all, know what we're working towards.
And being open to education, maybe you don't know the correct way to address that. You've done it for a long time, but things change, tiles change, everything like that. There's new standards. So, just not being stubborn, this is the way we've done this, and not being open to, new methods, education of better ways to do things.
Our goal is to make the builder, the client, really be problem-free where they can focus on getting other jobs instead of babysitting a particular job because somebody before us didn't, another top contractor they hired did a poor job. And so we really want to make your job as easy as possible where you guys can focus on other things, sales and, running the other trades. That's what we try to do. That's our goal is to have, again, where they want to continue to use us and why we want to give them the reason why.
Deal.
Wow, I feel like what a wonderful ending to that. I feel like tile installers, builders, we're all happy friends after this conversation, right? So does anyone have any questions for either our tile contractors or our custom home builders? Yes.
I have a lot. Might take 4 to 10 minutes, actually.
I love it.
I'll start. First of all, there's a great white paper for Zelnick Tile that we just created with NTCA that you might find helpful, and you might want to give it to your clients because it really is extremely helpful. On the other point, I'm not doing a sales pitch here, but as 27 years of an owner of a tile installation business that did high-end residential, I just got purchased by Fireclay Tile. So Fireclay Tile are the first fully vertically integrated tile company in the U.S. that manufactures and installs. And to your point, they're handmade tile. We actually offer a maker's guarantee that you can buy at 10% of the cost of the tile, but we will give you all your money back if the installer installs it incorrectly and give you new tile. So that does exist with Fireclay Tile. And also we have a rendering program that is better than any architectural drawing that you can find out there that has every detail down to the closest detail that you can find on a drawing that will have your installer give him a roadmap that will absolutely execute that installation to fulfillment.
Is that free of charge if we're going to buy the tiles?
If you buy the install, yes. If you don't, there's a cost for that. But it's $350, depending which level you buy. There's 3 levels. And one gets really into the trim. It zooms in. It shows you exactly where the ground joints are. Nobody has a rendering program like that in the country. It's amazing.
Yeah, we just installed a house full of fire clay, so.
So with that maker's guarantee plus a 10% of the cost of the tile, you would have had full warranty on that, not with the install, but with the tile, that they would have replaced at no cost and given you all the money back for the tile. And then on the labor side, that's always challenging. But I'm beginning to understand because the CEO of the company is really into metrics and measuring, and we can't change anything unless we can measure it. And so now, we have an onboarding program now for installers coming on board that does not sets them up for success rather than failure. And I've found in the past that most people, when you hire them, you don't give them a chance. You don't even get to find out where the skill set's at before you put them loose and move on. And by having a standard operating procedure and an onboarding program, I'm finding it's working a lot better to be able to find out where the weaknesses are of that installer and actually see if it's trainable and give him the tools that he needs to set him up for success.
You better put $10 in the jar before you leave for that infomercial. Because this guy has a legitimate question. You were given a sales pitch.
He said he was going to take up the whole 10 minutes.
That's true.
You can put a muzzle on him.
You had a question?
I'm in the same wheelhouse as you folks. I'm trying to build an apprenticeship program because there's no skilled labor, and Bob has been doing it forever. I usually come in to either fix issues and fix showers that have just been, almost I would say 60% of my business is tearing out a shower that's fake. And redo it, hiring homes, things like that. And so my question is, because I'm trying to build up the labor force, because there's not really anyone doing that, and I need it because I don't want to do it when I'm 65 years old. And my question for you is, what should the compensation rate differ? Like, how much should it increase, percentage-wise, from where we start them at? Because I know it's different in all parts of the country. When they start at the entry level apprenticeships with the floors, making cuts, mixing mud, to where now they're building showers. Like, where does this kind of fall? Like, is it like, should they make twice as much when they're, from when they're making the cuts? Say if they start at 15, should they cap out at 30? They can, I just give them the layout and the oversight is very minimal type thing.
There's no chart that you can follow. People have develop matrices to try to follow. But every company is so different and diverse that it's really hard to initiate that. One thing that you can do, National Tile Contractors Association has a tile university. And there's a lot of chapters in there that goes, we spend a lot of money with training. And so they're a module that might last for 2 or 3 minutes, might last 5 minutes, that they can go home and look at it, they can look at it, you can pay them to look at it. Every Wednesday we have training day. So every Wednesday morning we have everybody come in, we show them a segment of Tile University. Some of it may be in reinforcement to one that's seasoned, that's worked there for a while. Or it might be new to someone, but at least, then we ask questions. And sometimes we'll get vendors to come in the morning that, we're getting ready to apply a waterproofing and come in and demonstrate the waterproofing. So that way everybody's on the same page instead of go read a bucket and then apply the bucket. They read the bucket, they're speed readers when they read the bucket instead of really knowing what those details really represent. So, it's really about education on the scale, on the scale part is we try to, obviously when they come in, they don't know anything. Then when they establish that they can grout, then it's moved on to the next stage. But it's all about stages.
Correct. So I'm trying to build that so I can encourage young folks, because we're going to have to start going to high school. There's just no labor force right now. So I'm having to create one is where I'm kind of at. And so yeah, just looking to get that, okay, so yeah, once you achieve this level, okay, now you're doing this and this and this. What can I tell these kids, what
Well, you want to.
expect? I know it's different for different graphic, but as far as like I said, it's so say you're laying tile in Oregon, the guy makes some buds getting paid $10 an hour. What is the guy who's shouting at the cuts, the guy making the cuts? Is it what's the percentage difference per se? I know there's no standard, but what has helped you retain these folks and encourage them to stick with you? Because the last group that I attended, they had a neat little idea about building a system for turnover. Well, it takes 5-7 years to train someone properly to really gather that skill to build showers and do stuff like this.
Well, you just we continue just to give them small raises instead of big raises. Because if you do that, you might lose them in between. If they say, I'm going to pay them $2 raise in 6 months. You're better off giving it small increments and keeping them hungry and keeping them engaged than waiting for that 30 days or 60 days. I'm going to give you a $2 raise. Or one thing that some people do is they take the CTI test. And I'm going to give them a $2 raise. Well, what changed between yesterday and today other than them taking a test? I mean, if they deserve a raise, give them a freaking raise because you want them to stay. Don't put it on that and then you put this big ball of cheese saying, okay, now I get that. They're the same person. They're basically the same skill level, but they took a test. What makes them that much greater? And some people do that. I don't agree with that.
So, just having an apprentice know where they're at and the direction they're going is really important. Before we join an apprenticeship program, which you should definitely look into in your area, is there already an apprenticeship program there that you're not aware of? Or maybe you're going to put together one with networking with other contractors in your area, which we have. We're really fortunate to have our apprenticeship program as a co-op with 7 different companies. And, we might be competition or we're bidding for the same jobs, but we're together, raising the bar of the future installers in our area, which, the rising tide rises all ships mentality. And, and we don't have like a set, review. You need to wait until 12 months to be reviewed. If they're moving forward, they're building their tools on up, they're going on NTCA University, they're excited about it, their rate's going to show that. But as far as what rate of pay, your areas definitely will dictate that.
Yeah, reward them and retain them.
I think the best investment you can make today is go down to the NTCA group and sign up, honestly.
Absolutely.
All from that, and the programs also will be able to answer most of those questions.
Nice, very nice. Yes, over here. If you didn't hear that, he asked what technology can help you and make your job a little easier.
Well, one thing is the availability of takeoff programs.
Yeah.
You know, takeoff programs, and I still hear people use a ruler for doing takeoffs. Well, you know, if it goes to, say, 1.75, you're going to always move it to 2 just to cover yourself. And, you know, when I started using a digitizing tablet 20 years ago because the guy, you know, kind of forced it down my throat, and I got it. And I could always sell ourselves as being 2 to 3% more accurate in our takeoffs because we had the technology to do it. That's one thing. The computer programs now, I mean, you know, are so detailed when it comes to labor. You know, and one of the questions we had was, computers have helped and hurt all of our businesses. How have they obviously helped that elevate, you know, your knowledge and everything else? One thing bad is they've hurt from the standpoint, it's really the internet. Sometimes you'll go out to a customer's house and they know more than you do. And it's like, well, I got it on the internet. And AI is even making that worse because they're so daggum smart. And it's like, well, you tell me how to do it. You tell me what you're going to
do it yourself then.
Yeah, exactly. And so that part of it has hurt our business instead of helped our business.
So
We want to educate them.
So a resource to make, you know, at least as contractors or anybody, our job easier, to go back what Martin said, joining the NTCA, you know, it's just a wealth of knowledge. It's going to elevate your business just overall. It's the single most important thing that definitely helped our business. And I know
Like anything else,
a lot of the people here.
you got to put something into it to get it out. If you get a book, you know, there's TCNA handbook. If you put it on your desk and never open it, you're not going to benefit from it. You open it up and you read it, and it's like, wow, I didn't know this stuff was available. So you got to apply yourself. You got to apply, again, you get out of it what you put into it.
Absolutely. Good. We have time for maybe one more question, if anyone. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, everyone, for attending. Thank you to our panelists. If we could give them a round of applause. And please, if you have any questions that maybe we didn't answer or anything you want to connect to these folks about, I'm sure they'll be around. Stick around for just a little bit if you want to chat with them. But thank you so much again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.